don't be so dramatic. Jessica has big news, Mom chirped when I tentatively reminded her it was my birthday. So, I celebrated it myself, elsewhere. Later, my parents called endlessly. 21. It felt like it should be something. The kind of birthday that actually signifies a shift, a genuine step into adulthood, finally able to join my friends at the bar without feeling like a criminal with a borrowed ID. I wasn't picturing a lavish party, honestly, just hoping maybe, just maybe, my family would acknowledge the day. Turns out, I was kidding myself. Growing up, the pecking order was pretty clear, I wasn't at the top. My little sister, Jessica, was the center of their universe. She could do no wrong. If she desired something, it was instantly hers. Any mistakes she made were glossed over with excuses. Me? I felt like an afterthought, the one who had to figure things out on my own while my parents were constantly doting on her. It wasn't blatant favoritism, no dramatic scenes ripped from a movie, but that's what made it so grating, the subtle slights, the quiet dismissals, the unspoken understanding that I just didn't matter as much. Jessica's piano recitals were treated like major national events, whereas my high school graduation was just an obligation they had to endure. By the time I turned 18, I had already started emotionally distancing myself. I moved out the instant I could, found my own apartment, and lowered my expectations accordingly. But a foolish, hopeful part of me still clung to the idea that my 21st birthday might be different, that maybe, for once, they would truly see me. I wasn't even asking for a lot, just a simple dinner. That morning, I sent a text message to the family group chat, "Hey, what time are we meeting for dinner?" Silence. I wasn't particularly shocked, at least not initially. My parents weren't exactly glued to their phones, and Jessica rarely bothered to respond to anyone unless it directly involved her. Still, as the hours ticked by, that familiar sinking feeling in my stomach grew heavier and heavier. By noon, I was making up elaborate stories in my head to excuse them, maybe they were incredibly busy. Maybe they thought I meant dinner later in the evening. Or maybe someone would eventually call and say, "Hey, happy birthday." Dinner at 7 o'clock. 3 o'clock arrived. Still nothing. My thumb hovered over the screen of my phone, my eyes glued to the stark white of an empty message thread. It felt like watching a disaster unfold, frame by painful frame, only I was the sole witness. The clock ticked relentlessly towards 3:30, and I finally gave in, dialing Mom's number. She answered almost immediately, her voice bright and breezy, like it was any ordinary afternoon. "Hi, sweetie, what's going on?" I drew a breath, stalling. Are we still on for dinner tonight?" A beat of silence hung in the air, followed by a sigh I knew all too well. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice laced with that carefully calibrated tone people reserve for delivering bad news. "I meant to tell you earlier. We're actually going out with Jessica tonight." I straightened my back against the couch cushions, a knot forming in my stomach. "Wait, what do you mean?" "Jessica has some exciting news she wants to share, so we're taking her out to celebrate," Mom explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. My eyes widened. "It's my birthday." She chuckled, a sound that stung more than I cared to admit, like I was a child throwing a tantrum over a stolen toy. "Oh, don't be like that. We'll do something special for you next weekend, okay?" In the background, I could hear Jessica's voice, light and carefree, utterly unaware of the knife twisting inside me. "Is that her? Tell her we'll bring back a doggy bag." More laughter rippled through the phone. My stomach clenched tighter. It wasn't an oversight. It wasn't simply poor timing. It felt intentional, a calculated exclusion. I could have argued, pleaded my case, demanded my rightful place. But what would be the point? They knew exactly what they were doing. They simply didn't consider my feelings important enough. So, I forced the words past the lump in my throat, managing a strained, "Yeah, sure. Have fun." And then, I disconnected the call. I remained seated for what felt like an eternity, staring at my phone as if sheer willpower could rewrite reality, as if a notification might materialize, declaring, "Just kidding. Of course we're celebrating you." But nothing. My hands trembled, not with sadness, not even with plain disappointment, but with the sickening realization that I had been deliberately and hurtfully excluded. I was fuming. Then, a thought sparked. I dialed Maya, my best friend. "Hey," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Want to grab dinner tonight?" She picked up on the undercurrent in my voice immediately. "Of course. What's going on?" I spilled everything. The whole frustrating, infuriating mess. She didn't hesitate for a second. "Come over. My mom and dad would love to celebrate with you too." That's the amazing thing about Maya's family, they had treated me with more kindness and genuine warmth in the last 3 years than my own parents ever had. I was just Maya's friend, but her mom would always make a point to send me home with a plate of leftovers whenever I missed one of their family dinners. Her dad would ask about my writing, and you could tell he actually listened to the answer. They saw me. As I pulled into their driveway, her mom was already beaming from the doorway. "Happy birthday, darling," she exclaimed, pulling me into a warm hug. "Come in, we're going out somewhere lovely tonight." I'm not usually one for big emotional displays, but I swear, my throat tightened up. We ended up at a really nice Italian place, the kind my parents always talked about taking me to, except this time I was actually wanted there. We ordered appetizers, laughed, and ate really good food. Maya's dad even ordered a bottle of Prosecco because, as he put it, this young lady is finally 21. That absolutely deserves a toast. For the first time all day, I felt genuinely acknowledged and celebrated. And then, as I was finishing my tiramisu, I snapped a quick photo of the restaurant's entrance and posted it on Instagram. My caption was simple: "Huge thanks to Maya and her incredible family for making my birthday so special. So grateful to have people in my life who truly care about me." I didn't really expect much of a reaction. I honestly didn't think my parents would even see it. I was wrong. Less than an hour later, my phone was blowing up with notifications. First, a text from my mom, "Olivia, what is this post about?" Then, a text from my dad, "Are you serious right now?" And then the phone calls started, one right after the other. I let them all go straight to voicemail, a small, satisfied smile playing on my lips. They weren't calling because they actually felt bad. They were calling because I made them look bad. That was a completely different kind of power I now held, and it felt strange. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I ignored the insistent vibrations, letting the calls ring out and go straight to voicemail. Then came the flood of texts, one right after another, like a breached dam, each notification a tiny, stinging reminder. I didn't even need to read them, I already knew what they'd say. My parents were furious, not because they'd forgotten my birthday, not because they felt any remorse for excluding me, but because I'd exposed them. It wasn't about what they did, it was about other people knowing what they did. That was the crux of it all. Initially, I thought I'd just face a barrage of yelling, maybe some strategically placed guilt trips. But my parents never took the direct route. They preferred damage control. Instead of owning their actions, they'd twist the narrative, making it seem like I was the one overreacting, being dramatic. That was their well-worn tactic: rewrite the story before I even had the chance to voice my perspective. It was always easier to paint me as the unstable, emotional one than to actually accept responsibility. I should have anticipated this. Deep down, I knew they wouldn't let this go unanswered. By the following morning, I had a text from my cousin Jake, asking what was happening, a missed call from my uncle, and a voicemail from my grandma: "Sweetheart, your mother is heartbroken. She called me in tears last night. She just doesn't understand why you're doing this." Of course, she was crying. My mom always cried when she wanted sympathy, it was her go-to move to get out of trouble. It was all part of her well-rehearsed performance: play the victim, ensure everyone witnessed her supposed pain, and deflect the focus away from her own actions. Then came the real blow. She said they didn't forget your birthday. She said they had planned something for next weekend, and you just misunderstood. There it was, the rewrite, the carefully constructed new narrative. They wanted to erase the fact that she hadn't even sent a text. Forget the fact that she laughed when I reminded her it was my birthday. Forget the years of subtle favoritism and outright neglect. None of that mattered, because, in her version of events, I wasn't the ignored daughter. I was the problem child, the instigator. By noon, the full picture had emerged. They had contacted every relative who would lend an ear, twisting the story to their advantage, and allowing the manipulation to ripple outwards, poisoning the whole family. They preempted me, as they always do, casting themselves as the injured party before I could even open my mouth to defend myself. For a moment, I considered responding, trying to explain my perspective, but I quickly dismissed it. They'd been carefully cultivating this image of me for years, subtly suggesting that I was overly sensitive, prone to emotional outbursts, and generally dramatic. Any attempt to argue now would simply reinforce their narrative, proving their preconceived notions correct. Then my father called. I hesitated, staring at the phone, before answering. Ignoring him would only amplify the situation, I knew. This has gone beyond the pale, he declared the second I answered. No greeting, no acknowledging my birthday, even belatedly, just a direct, pointed accusation. You humiliated your mother. You humiliated this family. I sank back into my chair, a wave of weariness washing over me. Did I? Or did I simply speak the truth? His voice dropped, becoming measured, controlled, a little frightening. You have until tonight to remove that post. If you don't, there will be ramifications. There it was. The first explicit threat, laid bare. I exhaled slowly, deliberately. I was finished with the charade. Such as? A brief silence. He hadn't anticipated my defiance. Honey, I don't want to argue with you, he said, changing his approach, trying a softer tactic. I just don't understand why you're doing this. We've always supported you, been there for you. I actually chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. He sighed audibly. Sweetheart, I'm not going to debate this with you. Of course not, because debating would require acknowledging the truth, confronting the reality of the situation. Then he delivered the blow, you're forfeiting your inheritance. I should have been prepared for it, but it still stung, caught me slightly off guard. I paused, absorbing the impact of his words. Then I laughed again, a genuine laugh this time, almost a laugh of relief, because what else could I do? And I said, finally. Silence stretched between us. Then, in a tone so sharp it could shatter glass, he demanded, you truly don't care, do you? Not even a little. He took a sharp breath. You're making a grave mistake. I just shook my head, a small, silent gesture of defiance. No, I made the mistake of thinking you actually gave a damn about me. Click. The line went dead. I sat there, phone still in my hand, half expecting the familiar wave of regret to wash over me, the guilt that I'd somehow failed again. But it didn't come. Instead, a strange sense of lightness began to settle in. For years, I'd been trying to be the daughter they wanted, striving for a place in their hearts, chasing after approval that always seemed just out of reach. Now, staring at the blank screen, the truth felt undeniable, I'd been yearning for something that simply wasn't there. And I couldn't do it anymore. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, you really had to make a scene, huh? Even through the words, I could practically hear the condescending tone, the subtle annoyance that always seemed to be directed at me, as if I was the one disrupting the peace. I didn't bother replying. What was the point? She had never understood, because she never had to understand. She'd never had to compete for their attention, never had to wonder if she was enough. She always got the best of them, while I got the crumbs. Then came the email from my mother. It was long, rambling, a classic performance. The first few paragraphs were a carefully constructed facade of love, emphasizing the importance of family. The next section was a sharp turn, disappointment, embarrassment, accusations that I was ruining my own life. The final blow, delivered with a calculated sweetness: "We just hope you can learn to appreciate what we've done for you before it's too late." A threat disguised as concern, expertly manipulative. Without a second thought, I deleted it. By morning, the extent of their damage control became terrifyingly clear. A text from a coworker made my stomach drop. "Hey, your mom called my mom. She said you were going through some kind of mental health crisis and needed space. What the hell is going on?" I could barely process it. They hadn't just twisted the story for family, they were broadcasting it, painting me as unstable, undermining my credibility. Any attempt to defend myself would only confirm their narrative. Part of me knew I should be furious, should be screaming and breaking things. But all I felt was an overwhelming exhaustion, a bone-deep weariness. Later that night, Sarah found me on the porch, just staring up at the dark, starless sky. She settled in beside me, offering a beer. "They won't stop, will they?" she said, her voice even. I knew she was right. "No, they won't." She leaned against my shoulder, a comforting weight. "So, what now?" she asked, a question hanging in the air between us. I let out a long, slow breath. "Now," I said, turning my head towards her, managing a weak, tired smile, I moved forward. The next morning brought with it the expected sting. A final text message from my mother glared from the screen: "You've broken my heart. I hope you're happy." No apology. No acknowledgement of my feelings. Just the familiar pull of manipulation, right up to the bitter end. I handed my phone to Sarah without a word. "Could you do something for me?" She looked up, her brow slightly furrowed with concern. "Of course. What is it?" "Block them. Both of them." She didn't even pause to consider it. A few quick taps on the screen, and they were gone. Vanished from my digital life. I exhaled slowly, and a lightness bloomed in my chest. It was the absence of a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for so long. Sarah nudged my arm gently. "How are you feeling?" I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. "Like I can finally breathe," I admitted, the words tasting like freedom. That night, I slept deeper and more peacefully than I had in years. Let them spin whatever narrative they chose, I was done playing their game. For the first time, I felt no compulsion to justify myself. No desperate urge to make them understand, because I finally acknowledged a painful truth: they didn't want to understand. They never had. The following morning, Sarah and I went to our usual breakfast spot. It felt like a normal day, a welcome normalcy. But beneath the surface, a knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach. My parents weren't the type to simply let go. They wouldn't allow me to just walk away and live my life. And I was right, of course. The moment I switched my phone back on, the first notification assaulted me: an email from my father. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen, before finally opening it. The subject line was simply, "Matthew." The message itself began, "We need to talk. This behavior of yours is unacceptable. You're creating a spectacle of this family, and quite frankly, it's embarrassing." That email. It echoed in my head long after I read it. "We raised you better than this." The implicit threat hung heavy: come back, be who we want you to be, or face the consequences. Family is forever, they always said, but what kind of forever demands you sacrifice yourself? I stared at the screen, feeling that familiar knot of frustration tighten in my chest. Part of me wanted to dissect their words, to meticulously explain, again, why I couldn't just slot myself back into the role they'd carved out for me. But I knew it was futile. Years of trying to be heard had taught me that lesson. They weren't interested in understanding, they wanted compliance. So, I typed a response, each word carefully chosen for its finality. There's nothing left to discuss. Your decisions have led to this, and I'm making mine. Your embarrassment is yours alone to bear. I'm done. Please, do not contact me again. I pressed send and, driven by a need to sever the connection completely, blocked their email addresses. Sarah, my roommate, looked up from her mug, her brow furrowed with concern. You all right? Yeah, I replied, trying to inject some conviction into the single syllable. The following week was unsettlingly silent. I braced myself for another barrage, another attempt to manipulate me back into the fold. Instead, nothing. Then, late one evening, my phone rang. It was my landlord, Matt. Hey, it's Matt. Sorry to bother you so late, but your mom called the office today. Wanted to confirm the details of your lease, said it was for a family emergency. Sounded a little off, so I thought I'd check with you directly. My jaw tightened. They were relentless. The audacity to involve my landlord, to weave their way into my life under false pretenses, was truly breathtaking. They weren't respecting my boundaries, they were obliterating them. They needed to control me, and they would stop at nothing. I managed a weak laugh. Yeah, not exactly a life-or-death situation. More like, they just can't stand not being in charge. That's what I thought. A sigh escaped him. Listen, I don't know the specifics of what's happening with your family, but if you want, I can add a note to your account. That way, no one releases any information to them without your express consent. I exhaled slowly, relief washing over me. Yes, that would be fantastic. Alright, consider it done. Take care. The line went dead, and I found myself clutching the phone a little too tightly. They weren't simply annoyed, a wave of desperation was rising. Desperate people are prone to rash decisions. I needed to be vigilant. It was as if confirmation had been waiting for me. The very next day, Sarah received a text from a number she didn't recognize. I know you're poisoning him against us. I don't know what you've been whispering in his ear, but you will not take our son away from us. You'll regret this. Sarah's eyes rolled skyward. Wow, they really think I'm some kind of evil mastermind, don't they? They think you're the source of the problem, because that's easier than admitting they are the problem. I blocked the number on her phone, feeling a surge of anger on behalf of her. The final blow came a few days later. I was immersed in work when my manager called me over. Hey, he said, looking at me concerned, I just wanted to check in. Your father called the office this morning. He sounded worried about you and wanted to know if everything was all right. I gaped at him. You have to be kidding me. I wish I were. Sympathy lined his face. I didn't give him any information, don't worry. Just thought you should know. I expelled a frustrated breath, shaking my head slightly. I'm speechless. I've seen this before, he said, his voice soft. Parents who struggle to accept that their child is an adult. They try to maintain control any way they can. Please, be careful, okay? I nodded, forcing myself to meet his gaze. Yes, I will. My chest constricted with a cold, burning anger. They were actively trying to sabotage my reputation, damage my credibility. If they could paint me as unstable, as someone behaving erratically, perhaps they believed they could regain control over me and my life. But I wasn't that scared, easily manipulated kid anymore. And I certainly wasn't afraid of them. They would find I was a force to be reckoned with. That night, the weight of everything propelled me home. I knew I needed to explore my options, so I called a lawyer. Not to start a war, just to understand my position. Could they legally target my job? Could they somehow jeopardize my apartment lease? What would constitute real grounds for legal recourse if they kept pushing? It turned out I wasn't as powerless as I felt. Methodically, I began documenting everything, every text, every email, every call. I also updated my HR file, explicitly stating that no information should be released to anyone claiming to be a family member. I wanted to close off every avenue they might try to exploit. Then, I composed and sent my final message: "You have crossed boundaries I never imagined you would. The attempts to manipulate, the lies, the interference in my life are unacceptable, and I will not endure it any longer. Let me be absolutely clear, cease all contact with me, now. Any further attempts to reach me will result in legal action." The following weeks felt like an eternity, a constant anticipation of the other shoe dropping. Would more messages come? Would they appear at my doorstep? Would they escalate their campaign of harassment? But nothing happened. Finally, the message had sunk in. Sarah and I went out to celebrate that night. Dinner, laughter, and a toast to my newfound freedom. "You did it," she said, her eyes bright with pride. "You actually did it." "Yeah," I replied, my gaze fixed on my wine glass. "I guess I did." She reached across the table, gently squeezing my hand. "Are you all right?" I paused, taking a moment to truly consider the question. "You know what? I think I am." And it was true. Looking back, I realize I always knew this was where things were headed. Maybe not in this precise manner, but in some form, some way, it was inevitable. You don't spend a lifetime feeling like an afterthought and suddenly become the center of someone's world. People don't fundamentally change unless they truly want to, and, deep down, I knew my parents never had any genuine desire to. The insidious thing about my family's toxic patterns was how they subtly convinced me I had to participate, that our shared blood demanded unwavering loyalty and, above all, my silence. It took me years to realize the truth: I was never obligated. Leaving wasn't a clean break, it was a painful tearing, a process that still leaves a raw ache sometimes. But despite the lingering pain, for the first time, I feel genuinely unburdened. I'm free to create a life that feels authentic, to cultivate a community of individuals who offer genuine care and support. I've learned family isn't a matter of inherited DNA, it's a conscious selection. And finally, at long last, I chose myself. It's the best decision I ever made, even on the bad days.